I want you to really think about in your current life, don't care how young you are, old you are, healthy or unhealthy you are. If one of these things happened to you out of nowhere, out of the blue, don't tell me whether it is or isn't going to happen because who knows? How would you fund it? What would actually happen? Would your income protection kick in? How soon? Do you have trauma cover? How much would you get? Do you have TPD, but then you recover? You go back to work, so you're not covered? Because the lifetime cost of a heart attack is estimated to be $95,000. So let's say you had to cover that. If you're like, oh, I could probably make it work over a lifetime, maybe that would be okay. Cool. At what cost? Where would the money come from? What if it was more than that? What if you suffered something that was much more severe? Because remember, these are just the most commonly claimed on events because they happen the most often. Where is this money coming from? I don't think I can tell you how much cover I have because I'm pretty sure that would be classed somewhat as advice. But I will say that for a lot of people, they pick an amount of money that gives them some medical buffer that might cover a percentage of their income, remembering that income protection covers generally a percentage as well, for a certain period of time. So let's say income protection covered you, I'm just guessing, 70% for 2 years. They might say, well, for a lot of these issues, I think I'd be back at work for 2 years. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. But maybe I'll cover the 30% gap that I'm not going to get for income protection for 2 years. Maybe I'll cover an amount of money for out-of-pocket medical expenses, and I'll base it off one of the commonly claimed on medical events. And maybe I'll do 100% of what they say the out-of-pocket cost is, or maybe I'll do somewhere in between. It might be budget dependent. If you've got a partner, you might say, okay, well, I want my partner to have a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year off work or what have you. And I want to understand what my private healthcare costs are going to cover or not cover, and I might add in an amount for that. You build it however you want, or you work with an expert to build it, however you and them see fit. For child cover, what I often saw was people doing an amount of money for medical out-of-pocket expenses, not covered by private health cover, and then often it actually would be a replacement of parent or household income for a period of time. Now, normally there are limits on how much child cover amounts you can have. From memory, it was like $200,000, but that was a couple of years ago, so it might have increased by now. Ultimately, you don't want to feel like you've won the lottery because you have a heart attack and like my dad, you're off walking to the pub, I don't know, a couple of weeks later and you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars stashed in your pocket because you've met the definition. There have been situations that I've seen where that's happened and they might feel like they've won the lottery, but they're probably not ever able to claim on heart attacks again, potentially. So they need to think about that. But we do want to make sure that if something does happen to you, you aren't plunged into a shite situation. You just need to remember that it's very definitional based when it comes to trauma cover. And I was thinking about this because we've obviously done 4 episodes and I wish I had more recent data, but data from a number of years ago said that overwhelmingly the majority of people who are covered from an insurance standpoint in Australia are men, disproportionately men. Either they have some cover, higher levels of cover, and I think that is because in many instances they might earn more than a female partner and you might think, oh, well, I don't need to be insured because they bring in the income. This is clearly a wild and gross generalization. But if you are a stay-at-home person, you might not be able to get income protection. You might have a TPD contract that is based on domestic duties, which is hard to claim on. But do not underestimate how much work you do that would cost an enormous amount of money if you are not bringing in an income, but you are running a household. And that should be factored in if you're considering life insurance and all the covers really, but also trauma cover. Because if you couldn't cook, clean, do child rearing, if you couldn't take your parents to their, I don't know, appointments and what have you, whatever it might be, someone is going to get paid to do that work, or it's not going to happen, or someone else is going to have to pick up the slack. That, if you do the math on it, can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So just in case throughout these episodes you've been thinking, we don't really need it for me, this is not necessary, I think we need to say that at a societal level, we do not value unpaid care work. We do not see it as the work that it is. However, if you need to start paying for it, you will quickly see that that amounts to a huge, huge amount of money. So to wrap up my mini-series, I hope you now have a bit more of an understanding of these different parts and how they click together. How having one doesn't mean that you are out of the danger zone, because if you suffer something entirely different, one of those things may not cover you. It is always a balance between getting the contract that is going to have good definitions, be priced at a point that is going to make sense for your budget, be structured in a way that is suitable, so potentially considering whether any or part of something could sit inside super or not, making sure that you've got the right beneficiaries, especially for life insurance because it's a non-estate asset. And over time, as you build your assets, looking at how you can potentially reduce your cover to reduce your cost. Growing money means that we are looking at building our wealth and simultaneously protecting it. One without the other does not financially free make.